So this driver very much is about a distressed and compromised human population. It's also harder and more expensive to be healthy now. Behavior accounts for 50% of our health. So basically, we can control our health by behavior. But if health is getting more expensive and more difficult, what does that say about what's going to happen? In poor urban districts, many times there's not access to fresh food. You have polluted environments, or you have not very many green spaces for kids to exercise in. We're seeing this play out with, endemic diabetes, asthma, allergies, depression. This slide shows an increase in mental health needs by students. And this is something that, as educators, you guys have known and heard for a long time. Comer talks about this, about the whole child, and about making sure that we provide for different aspects of the child. But if we are having a community now that is distressed by chronic illness, it means they have to manage their illness every day. It means it's not just that they were sick for a day or two. It means that every day they have to wake up and think about, how am I going to manage my diabetes? How am I going to manage my asthma? Oh, it's a bad air day today. Am I going to be able to go to school? Am I going to be able to teach if the air quality is so poor that my asthma is going to act up? So if people are constantly having to manage their health, what kind of implication is this going to have in education? How will more restrictive measures or limited activity resulting from chronic illness impact children's engagement daily in school, or on that matter, teachers' engagement? Sick herd as a driver also has implications with the next driver. And I promise we'll hopefully get a little more optimistic again after I go through the more negative drivers. But essentially what urban wilderness is about is that we're moving to a world of urbanization. This is the first year that urban dwellers will outnumber rural dwellers. Here in the United States, 80% of people live in metro areas. So we're becoming a country of urbanicity. If you look at it globally, you have megacities. You have Sao Paulo, you have Mexico City, you have Mumbai, megacities where over 20 million people are living. So again, the question becomes kind of this distressed factor on the environment. And what this slide talks about is that we have cities as extreme environments. In many ways, what this slide shows is the tale of two cities. You have what they call feral cities and social cities. So the feral cities are where you have no infrastructure, you have no social fabric, and your social city are basically the magnets for youth to come to, if some of you have ever read the book, The Creative Class, okay? So think also of maybe something like Detroit or St. Louis versus the Research Triangle in North Carolina or Chicago, and think about that. I'd actually never heard the term feral cities before, and so, as the traditional website person, I Googled the word, went to Wikipedia, and looked up feral cities. I actually want to read you the definition that was provided from worldchanging.com. In a feral city, social services are all but non-existent, and the vast majority of the city's occupants have no access to even the most basic health or security assistance. There is no social safety net. Human security is for the most part a matter of individual initiative. Yet, a feral city does not descend into complete random chaos. Some elements, be they criminals, armed resistance groups, clans, tribes, or neighborhood associations, exert various degrees of control over portions of the city. Inter-city, city-state, and even international commercial transactions occur, but corruption and violence are the hallmarks. A feral city experiences massive levels of disease and creates enough pollution to qualify as an international environmental disaster zone. The city's structures range from once great buildings symbolic of state power to the meanest shanty towns and slums. Yet even under these conditions, these cities continue to grow. The majority of occupants do not voluntarily leave. Very, very dire picture of what these feral cities look like, and many of us have images of this already by what we see happening. And then on the other side, you have the haves, right? So you have these cities where basically the whole community is working together collectively to create common goods, to create common economies, and then have participatory forms of government. And so essentially you have prosperous cities that are contingent on the creative knowledge-based capitalism, where the feral cities aren't that way. So again, the implications for education. How will urban growth strain existing institutions to provide infrastructures necessary for a healthy, productive life? If prosperous cities will depend on creative individuals as a means of civic management and economic development, how will we prepare all students? So we don't want to create a larger divide here. So we're going to go back, hopefully maybe, to something a little more positive now. And this is a driver about the end of cyberspace. And this is a very interesting driver in that there's no, what this means is there's no separation between digital space and physical space. Technology enhances our physical work with information, media, and connectivity. Very easy mental model for this. When I used to have to get somewhere, I pulled out my trusty dusty little map, and I looked around the map and I figured out how to plot myself from point A to point B. You know, I moved to Cincinnati, bought a big Cincinnati map, and that's how I got around Cincinnati. Well, you got mapquest.com, right? Well, I don't need a map anymore. I just put in my origination address, and I put in my destination address. I'm fully enabled not to ever have to look at a map again, and I can get there perfectly fine. Now, what end of cyberspace is, who needs a map? Who needs MapQuest? I have a GPS in my car. All I have to do is put in my destination address, and it bings when I have to turn right, it bings when I have to turn left. You get this comforting little voice, and you feel like you have good company, and you're never going to be lost again. That's the end of cyberspace. That basically your physical environment is now enhanced by technology. Another good example, let's see, I know we had our New Jersey person. Does anybody want to go to the New Jersey Turnpike without E-ZPass? Heck no, you're being a lot longer lines. But if you have E-ZPass up on your browser, up on your windshield, you just go through the toll booth like that because there's somebody who's recording that and deducts your account. Another example of another example of the end of cyberspace. A couple hotels are starting to offer touchscreen maps that are embedded with a GPS system. So I go to Paris, the Hilton gives me my touchscreen map, it has a GPS system, and basically I never have to ask the concierge another question because I basically plug in all the different sites and it tells me how to get to the historical places, it tells me which restaurants to go to, it tells me which bars to go to, and it maps it all out for me. There's a new product out there called Sky Scout, and it looks a lot like binoculars. So I didn't learn my I didn't learn my constellations very well, or my planets, or my stars very well, and I want to look up in the sky. I want to know what I'm looking at. I just click, point and click, and there's a GPS system in these binoculars, and it tells me which planets I'm looking at, what constellation system I'm looking at. So again, all of this information is embedded in your environment, and so it's enhancing your environment. Ultimately, if there's enough information that is it's called tagging, that's placed into an environment, we can personalize our environment. So say as a teacher, I go to the mall, and I have had different people tag that mall, and I have a device, and it tells me which stores offer discounts to educators, which stores contributed money to that most recent school fundraiser we had. Let's pretend that we were able to tag our gymnasium. It's a rainy day outside, and we're able to create a virtual space inside the gym of a wildlife habitat, all because of technology, and kids have hands-on learning right there and then. Imagine a struggling urban neighborhood augmented with local histories and personal perspectives. Or today, I walked around Philly in the morning, like I'm sure a lot of you did, found this very beautiful park, as I'm sure many of you did. Imagine if I had one of these devices and that park was tagged, it would tell me the history of that park, it would tell me when it evolved, the different uses, the different transitions it's undergone, who stood here, what leaders did what here. So this is really the story of the end of cyberspace, is that technology is embedded in our environment and we'll be able to personalize it if we'd like to. So how do we capitalize on this anytime, any place, anywhere learning? That's the question for education. And how do we capitalize on the fact that any place can become an enriched local learning environment? So those are the key drivers for today. And John is going to get a little bit more into some of these hotspots, and then Jillian Darwish tomorrow will get into the hotspots in real detail. So again, I kind of stuck at this 30,000 foot level and really wanted you guys to have an understanding of these drivers that exist in the external environment. This is what's going on in our economy, in our society. This is what's going to unfold over the next 10 years. This is what the map is about. And this is the question to you guys, is how is education going to respond to this? So I just wanted to end with two quotes. And one is, the future is here. It's just not very evenly distributed. And I remember the very first time that the Institute for the Future gave this map to us, I thought, gosh, this is a map of future forces in 10 years? Isn't this occurring right now? And you guys just saw all the examples I gave of what's occurring right now. Well, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the beginning. That's still going to go ahead and complete its cycle, and we don't know what kind of changes that's going to have on the society. And we want to make sure that the things that we value are taken care of when there is this radical cultural shift that goes on. The other quote I wanted to end with was, because we're in Philadelphia, was with Benjamin Franklin. Look before, or you'll find yourself behind. At KnowledgeWorks, we're happy to be the catalyst of change. We're happy to be the catalyst of providing this new paradigm for people. We also want to become change agents, and that's why we're here today with you guys, leaders around teaching and learning, and why we have a partnership with NCTAF that will be discussed later on in this meeting. But we hope to be change agents with you and not just catalysts of change. And thank you very much for your time today.